Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to, I suppose levering off the LA riots here, but just looking at migration to the West in general, not even looking at illegal migration, but where you're getting lower quality again, but even the legal migration today that's being sanctioned all across the Western world, controlled and directed and orchestrated by the globalist cabal. Every Western government now is no longer sovereign. They're all just branch officers of the globalist central secretariat. And so they're all doing, more or less the same thing with migration, but the quality of the migrants coming in. Now, any migrant, if you're going to hire someone, like if you've got a commercial business and competitive commercial business, and there's fewer and fewer of those around these days, but if you do, you need the best quality people to be successful, to do well, to make profits. Now sometimes there are basic jobs that you don't need geniuses for. I don't know, sweeping the floor or the parking lot attendant or something like that. But nonetheless, you still hire the best you can get for the role that you have. At least I would. But that's all changed. And if we look at it from an immigration point of view, there was a concerted attempt in certainly Australia's immigration policy, in the United States as well. Places like Britain didn't really have much of an immigration policy. They didn't have this idea that they would get lots of migrants. They had really a reverse. A lot of the people were leaving Britain to say go to places like Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, and so on. So the Australian immigration policy was, as much as possible, to for a long time they sort of really only wanted white people. This was a broadened, they broadened the white out to include, say, Greeks and Italians, including Southern Greeks and Italians that are actually quite swarthy. That also then incorporated Maltese, again, quite swarthy, and they were starting to take Lebanese Christians in and that sort of thing in the late 1960s or mid to late 1960s, around there. But for the most part, the idea was to say, well, what value can this person add? What qualifications? That this is a potential migrant. What qualifications do they have? Do they speak English? How quickly can they integrate? Would they need access to social services to get by? What are their qualifications in? For example, somebody may be a nurse. Now, nursing was in demand, so if you're a nurse, that's good, tick the box. Someone else may be, an engineer or an architect or even a tradesman, a carpenter or something like that. Well, again, tick the box, that's there. So there was a real attempt, not that every single one was that way. There were, for example, there was an Irish labourer that had like 7 or 8 children, and as a labourer, he had nothing there. His wife was never worked or something like that, and they were going to live on welfare, but they had 8 children. So the view was, well, hey, with that many children, that's 8 new citizens that are going to grow up and work and so on. So we'll take the hit on giving welfare to this guy because he's got the 8 children. So there were trade-offs back and forth, and it was far more nuanced than, you've got to be a white PhD or something. It was far more nuanced than that. Similarly, there were small quotas that were taken from refugee camps, and preference was given to white folks. And so how did it work out? Well, it worked out, pretty well, all told. It wasn't perfect. For people that came as sort of more or less refugees, they were put in like hostels, which were sort of, I don't know, what would you call it? Dormitories or say a military barracks or that type of thing. And there was communal food and eating and washing facilities. So everything was supplied for free, including English classes for those who wanted. Also, they'd help you go and find jobs. You could get a free bus ticket to go downtown to go for, say, a job interview at the the factory or whatever. So that was, and then people had time to find their feet and find a job. And when you'd had a job, I think it was I think you had to have it for like 2 months, or there was some time. Then you could go out and get. You had to leave the place and go out and find some sort of like find your own accommodation, that type of thing. So this was it perfect? Well, no, but did it work fairly well? Well, yes, it did. And the state wasn't throwing lots and lots of money at it. They were helping, but they weren't throwing vast sums of money at it. And these people were able to integrate. And if you spoke English, whatever, like as your first language, or you had competent English, things would be much easier. But they would still employ people in monkey see, monkey do jobs in manufacturing and basic stuff like that. I remember there was a large steelworks where a lot of people there didn't speak very good English, but they'd have interpreters and they would give them the simplest jobs, where it was very repetitive and you do this, you push that button, that type of thing, and that seemed to work fairly well, I suppose, all considered. But the idea was that each migrant would contribute something. They would have something to contribute, a skill, a knowledge, or something. Or in the case of the Irish guy with 8 children, they were bringing out eight new people were sort of taken as children were being brought in. They could be socialised into the Australian culture and society, and there'd be 8 new workers there. That was again a benefit. Now there were people that came from outside. I knew there's a woman who used to rail about what a Nazi hellhole Australia was. Fascist Nazi Hitler hellhole. Well, why was that? On what basis would she make that claim? Now her parents came from refugee camp and they had no skills at all, and they didn't speak a lick of English. Even though they were 12 months in a refugee camp somewhere. They came like somewhere in Eastern Europe, I think, like Belarus or around Minsk or somewhere like that. They had, even though they had access to free English classes, they didn't bother attending. So they arrived in Australia, couldn't speak a lick of English. They went to stay in a small enclave of other Russian speakers, and they never ventured out of that. The children that were like 1 and 3 or something when they came, another one was born here. They all played and hung around with other Russian kids, only spoke Russian. And then when they were 5 years old, they had to go to school. They couldn't speak a word of English, not one word. And now I would look back and say, well, look, that was your parents failed there. They should have learned. They knew they wanted to come to an English-speaking country, yet they made no effort to learn English. They arrived in an English-speaking country, still make no effort to learn English, and make no effort to prepare you for the inevitable, well-known in advance fact that you're going to go to school where they speak English, for goodness sake. No. She says, no, you're looking at it the wrong way. The school should have supplied Russian-speaking teachers to help us, smooth us into the education. They should have done that. The fact that the school did not supply special Russian to that school for us, the fact that the Russian, the education plan didn't do that, means they're racist, fucking fascist, fucking Nazis. That's what it means. Now that's her cognizance of things, and so she insists that she was the victim of evil, the most evil racism you could possibly imagine at 5 years old, by kids because she couldn't speak a word of English. She had no idea what they were saying, no idea what the teachers were saying. Now, on top of that, her parents were offered night school for English, after school English lessons and so on for the children and for them too, and they refused that. But this again, no, that wasn't done properly. You see, because if they should have done it this way. In fact, they didn't, means that they're Nazis again. Well, what about your parents? What about their responsibility to have taken up the challenge of learning English and getting you there? No, they're not in the wrong. Those other people are. The Australians are in the wrong, and they're the Nazis, and we're the oppressed, vulnerable, put upon people. And she's got that view. She's older than me. She's got that view. She'd be easily 65, 66 now. She's still got that view, still nurses that hurt and that anger as if it was 5 minutes ago, if it was yesterday. So what's the point of bringing out people like it? Well, there is none. But now you multiply that and you look at the Mexican situation or the South American situation in the United States, not just the illegals, of which there are many, but the legals. And if you look at the anger they have, the passionate, vindictive hatred they have for America and its people, its culture, and so on. They want the money and the handouts, and they believe they're entitled to that. But they believe that everything that happens to them is evil and wicked and racist and fascist and da da da. Now, how can that be? But like this woman from Belarus, no matter how they failed, and they failed comprehensively, everything was laid on for them, English lessons, everything. And yet they refused to participate, but claimed that everyone was being racist to them. Now, how you can have that view, I don't know. Is it a defensiveness? Is it a fear of the unknown? Is it a sense of entitlement? Is it just low IQ morons plying their, doing what they do? I don't know. This woman didn't seem like a moron. And yet she, again, nurses these hatreds and these hurts, claiming that everyone's racist to her. Now, when I was listening to there's various footage online of the Mexican Americans. So you got these Mexicans that are born in, or Mexican Americans that are born in the United States, yet they speak with a heavily Hispanically accented, language, English. That means they don't speak English very often. They still speak Spanish most of the time. And you can see the way they hesitate over certain verbs and so on when they're speaking in English. They're not speaking it every day. They had to learn it at school, but to what level of proficiency, we can assume not a very high level of proficiency. It's difficult to imagine someone like that, making it past a third year high school English test at all. Yet they're given free, affirmative action university degrees and so on. It's hard to believe that their level of competence in English will be enough to pass even the most basic, lowest level examination or test. Nonetheless, they're filled with this hatred for America. Well, why? Why do you have? What are this hatred? And this is a trained hatred. This is not an organic, natural hatred. One that's born from actually being, badly treated or mistreated in some way. These are the claims they have. America is bad because it stole Mexico from the Mexicans. That's not true. And even if it was somewhat true or minimally true, that was from 170 years ago or something thereabouts. So I don't understand. You've got a grievance from 170 years ago. So this is something that's been trained. This is something that they're low IQ people. They're not very bright. And they're being trained to say, well, you're an oppressed minority. You're a vulnerable, oppressed minority, oppressed by the fucking Nazis. And they've taken all this on board. Yeah, too fucking right, I'm oppressed. That means I need more handouts from the government in order that they can atone for their evil Nazi fascist swastika sins. Okay, so number one is America stole California from the Mexicans. All right, well, the population of what today is California, the population of California is almost, you could measure it in the few thousands back in the time when America acquired it. I think, like Los Angeles, for example, was a stopover religious mission that was run by, I think, Jesuit priests. The population of the entire Los Angeles region was only a few thousand at the time. So the entire population of California, you could measure it in the thousands. So the Spanish population or Spanish Indian population. So hard to see what they're talking about. Now, Los Angeles, San Francisco, all these places, they were nothing but little sort of tiny, wood hut villages. There was nothing there. So that they've now been turned into, large, or later on became turned into large cities and towns. California being one of the I think, the sixth or seventh biggest economy in the world, just that state alone. And all the development there, Los Angeles being a population of millions, San Francisco being one of the internationally recognized sort of gems with that beautiful harbor in there, or the Golden Gate, as it was called. The entrance to the harbor was dubbed by one Spanish explorer as the Golden Gate. So all this stuff where was the population? Where were the cities? Where was the wealthy sort of areas that later became when white people were running it? So, well, we want what's available today, not what was available then, because back then there was nothing available, nothing of wealth, nothing of consequences in California. It was only after the white people got California, acquired it, that they turned it to productive use. There was things like gold discovered near San Francisco as well. So none of this would have happened had the corrupt basket case Mexican state been in control of it. So I don't know, there was nothing there. So what was stolen from the Mexicans? A barren land with nothing on it. So that gets to the next level. The idea that California was stolen and all the wealth that we see today in California was there in 1840. Well, that's simply not true. So again, we're talking about idiotic, low IQ people who've been trained to fantasize and to hate. Now, on two other areas where they seem to have a real issue is an illegal. An illegal was talking about this again online. You see these things. Well, what's your grievance? Well, I'm an illegal and I don't want to go back to Mexico. I want to stay in this evil fascist Nazi Hitler swastika place because it's got more money than Mexico does and it gives me more free stuff. So I want to stay here. But I don't want to be deported back to Mexico because I want to bring out my relatives, my third cousin and my aunts, uncles, and I want to bring all them out and the whole fucking village where I came. I want to bring them out here to the United States. And if I get deported and so on and so forth, those dreams are all going to go up in smoke. Those highly illegal dreams are all going to go up in smoke. I want the American taxpayer to give me a good living. It's my fucking right. Those are Nazis if they won't do it. So that's one thing. The illegal is well, I don't want to go. I want to bring my cousin and everyone out here. Now, for those who are born in the United States, they're still being heavily radicalized. Again, they're not bright people. They're being heavily radicalized by various groups and various agitator groups. NGOs are a big part of that radicalization, and that needs to be clamped down on seriously by the Trump administration, I would argue at least. But their grievance is not dissimilar to the illegals. They say, well, now I'm a legal person in the United States, as in, I was born in the US as a citizen. I now want to use my citizenship to bring out other Hispanic people to the United States. We want to grow. This area is for us. I want to represent my people. Well, hold on a minute. You're an American citizen. I was born here and it's useful for, but no, I'm a Hispanic person and I'm here to represent my Hispanic diaspora and my family and wider family and my whole fucking village and yada yada. So on both counts, they see that the Trump administration has clamped down on immigration and illegal immigration as being directly contrary to their interests in terms of expanding and furthering the influence of their racial diaspora uniquely within the United States. So they see, hold on a minute, he's getting in the way of our plans here. Whereas previously, before the Trump administration, they could go ahead and plan all these illegalities with really hardly any pushback. But now they're getting, and they don't like it. And the plans and the same as the Indians in Australia, the plans and the views they have of expanding their influence in the country is being restricted, and they don't like it. So they're determined to riot to get their own way, and they think they're entitled to riot. They're entitled to have what they want, and the Trump administration and the various authorities need to act swiftly to strongly dissuade them from that point of view. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.